A lot of people don't know that, but the law is of the peoples. It's not the courts. It's ours as people and citizens.
On this podcast, we take a little bit of an unusual turn away from state office holders, and we visit with a Supreme Court law clerk from North Dakota. We're visiting with Charles Steinberger, who just recently wrapped up his one-year term as a law clerk for the North Dakota Supreme Court, and he's going to tell us what the role of a North Dakota Supreme Court law clerk actually is. A little bit of a behind-the-scenes look, if you will, of the North Dakota Supreme Court. All right, on the podcast, as noted, we are visiting with a former Supreme Court law clerk from North Dakota. So, Charles, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
I'm Charles Steinberger. I'm from Northwest North Dakota, farm kid through and through, graduate from NDSU and UND, and I currently work at a law firm here in Bismarck, Pearson Dirk.
So you were a law clerk for 1 year with the North Dakota Supreme Court. Most people have no idea what that is. They probably have seen it in shows and whatnot, but really don't know what it is. So how do you define that position of a law clerk for a Supreme Court justice?
You're kind of like an attack librarian, Brian, as funny as that may seem, because you're researching, you're reading, you're writing for the court, you're trying to help the court figure out what the correct answer should be. And so you're just kind of like an attack librarian. You attack a task and try to get it accomplished for them.
All right. And so what inspired you to want to do that?
Well, it's, thinking about it, I almost didn't do it because we had Justice Crothers came and gave a speech about, hey, we're hiring, come on in. And I looked around the room and I was like, there's about 15 smarter people in here. I'm not going to do this. And luckily, Dean Parrish, the UND students, Dean of students, he's like, you should do this. And don't just self-judge because you're a good student and you're a good leader and you should do it. So I just kind of took a leap of faith and was like, oh, if he thinks I can do it, I probably can.
So what is a typical day of a Supreme Court law clerk?
Ooh, that's a really good question because every day is different. Because some days, your slow days, you just have to go in, get your coffee and start reading, researching, maybe type something. But on your really exciting days, you have to, you might have to have a opinion drop to get proved. And then you have to start working on your next case highlight and case summary and your memorandum, which are due in a few days. And then after that, you have to go in and sit down and watch trial.
Okay. So what is legal memoranda and case summaries?
All right, well, we'll just tackle that in the order that they're due. So usually your case summary gives the average North Dakotan, if they're in Wishick or Palermo or Glenelg, and they know what's going on. It's in simple language, no legalese, of who the parties are, what's happening in the case, and what are they arguing. And so it's just kind of a way to tell the average North Dakotan how this pertains to them. And so after that, then you write a bench memorandum, and that doesn't go out to anybody other than the 5 justices. And you, as the clerk, you lay out what side A said and what side B said, and you compare law, and you say, well, maybe side A has it right on this issue, but they're wrong on the second issue. But in the alternate, side B, they might be wrong in that first issue, but right in the second issue. And, as a court, you have to balance what they have for law, what the law is, what they want it to be, and they as in the parties, not the court. The court just deciphers the law. They're the interpreter. And they have to balance all these things. And it's kind of really interesting to see how your memoranda kind of shapes the law. And then what was the case highlight? And then the opinion. So I skipped the opinion. That's what everybody thinks is when they think of the Supreme Court. It's the ruling or the holding from the court. And that's the people's ruling or holding because the law is yours. A lot of people don't know that, but the law is of the peoples. It's not the courts. It's ours as people and citizens. And then the highlight just says, oh, Party A won for this reason, pretty much. It's just a quick little snippet. I went way off in the bushes, and I apologize, Brian.
So how much reading and so forth are you doing ahead of writing any of that stuff then?
Before I even write anything, I read the briefs, and they can be anywhere from 5 pages if it's a really simple problem to, I think the longest one we saw when we were there was about 45 pages. And so you have to read those, and then you base that off of what cases they say, and you should go look at those cases and see what they have to say. And, if it's a novel issue, you got to go out of state and look at statutes. So probably for every case, a good benchmark is you probably read a Harry Potter book. To put it in just some layman's terms, it's about 300 pages before you really start writing.
Okay, I was going to ask if that was the first book she wrote or the last book she wrote.
I've never read them. I just use that as my benchmark. I have them. They're under my bed, and I just haven't read them yet.
Okay. Well, I kind of asked. I was going to say how much you read each month as a clerk, perhaps.
Yeah, you read a lot.
Would you say into the thousands of pages per month?
Yeah, but I don't want to scare people and say, oh, man, we're just reading all that. The thing is, because some of these pages, you're just, some opinion might have 10 issues, but only one pertains. So you read the facts, which are about 2 to 5 pages, and then your one section was probably a paragraph that you all needed. So it's not like I'm reading just the driest stuff ever. You read the facts, which are the story of the case, which are, I think, the most important because it tells you how everything got there. And then the law is obviously important too, but not as important as the facts, in my opinion.
Right. And so how do you determine it? You said you kind of look at some of those old cases or that they're referencing. Mm-hmm. Then you go back and you're researching some of those. So are you reading those opinions as well?
Could you...
opinions on cases that have been cited in their argument supporting their case.
Yep. So you for example, in a family law case, you have your rough Fisher factors, which are kind of your all be all, but some court cases have to interpret those. And so there might be 2 differing cases that are on a converging path to collide, and we make new law out of that, new interpretation. So you have to read those cases, and they might be cited by another case, or they might cite a case that's older that's still good precedent. So, you can really go down a rabbit's hole of research that might lead you to 1915 law, some law about 1915 about horses. You just never know what you're going to get.
So what are the skills that a law clerk needs then?
I think the biggest skill, the most important skill, is to have a personality, because when you work when you work with a justice, you have to be able to be cordial and work with them on a team and kind of be like, hey, what do you think of that? Or, hey, Chuck, why did you think this way and you wrote this way? Could you talk about it? So being able to be, communicate what you want to say, communicate it thoroughly, and have a good demeanor about it is probably the best thing. And probably the second thing is the ability to write. Because it takes one thing to just be throw words on a paper and call it good and check it, draft it once and out the door, and some poor English teacher's got to grade that thing. But at the court, before I handed anything off, it went through at least 5 to 10 drafts. And so being able to write good English, good punctuation, good grammar was, and I just said good English and good grammar, but proper writing techniques is truly key. And that's kind of underrated in today's society, I feel.
So along for that skill set and for just lawyering in general, are you a big reader just outside of prior to going to law school? Did you enjoy reading for sport, so to speak?
No. Between when I graduated high school and went to law school, I probably read 4 books. And that was 8 years. It was just never one of those things I did. I was a farm kid, hunted, and that's what I did. But now that I've become a lawyer, I cannot stop reading. I have a whole collection of Agatha Christie books, and I just 10 pages a night, because after a whole day of reading, just want something interesting, like a good mystery, a good story.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what is that? You said 5 to 10 drafts or something like that. What is that? Can you explain the process just a little bit more, step by step a little bit more?
Okay. Yep. So a legal memorandum has your opening paragraph, which tells the reader, this is what these are the parties, this is what Party A and Party B are arguing. And this is what I think the court should do based on the law the precedent that North Dakota has or the federal government has. And then you move into your facts section, which is all your key facts, your key dates. And then you move into like your body of your memoranda, which is issue A. You go with your issue, your rules. You apply the rules to your facts. Your rules to your rule. Apply the law and your rules to the facts, and then you conclude, and you repeat that till you're done. So my first draft was always a outline. I'd say, I always leave my ending for my beginning paragraph last because I always went in with an open mind of I have no idea which way I'm going to suggest because you just don't know what the law is going to really feel until you kind of get into it. And so that was my first draft. My second rough draft would be, those would come in, those bullet points would become actual thoughts and so on and so forth until draft 5 to 8, you had your final product that met Sue's approval.
Mm-hmm. And how many cases are you working on at a time?
I think the most that I worked on was probably 6. And I know that some people, just because of the way the calendar landed or, if they got a complex issue, one of the clerks had like 9 that they were working on. And I was like, buddy, what are you doing? That's a lot of time.
Right. And for listeners, the court does give or take 350 or more cases per year.
Right.
So is it 10 to 20 per month or more for the justices? And again, for people to understand that the justices in North Dakota randomly are assigned every 5th case. So they don't specialize in a particular case necessarily.
And it was actually 30 per month on
30
average.
per month, yeah. Because summers are also lighter.
Yeah, they don't hear cases in June and July, which I think is fair because
Yeah.
they're the most active appellate court in the United They won't look the part because they look pretty good for having because they have when I say they have paper and they read every document at least twice. They have paper and they read every document twice.
Right. And at the same time, just to kind of compare, the United States Supreme Court this last few years has done between 60 and 80 cases.
Right.
So the North Dakota Supreme Court is much more active in its caseload. What role do law clerks play in the court during the oral arguments?
So 90% of the time you're there just to take notes and listen in to really, I like because some people will do is they'll write one thing and argue a little bit off of that, but still in the same vein. And you're like, that's actually a really good way to look at it. Or they'll do like a slippery slope argument where it's like, if you do this, then this and this, and you got to follow that and be like, well, that's kind of flawed logic there, pal. Or sometimes, you just like, this is a really good argument. I just missed it, so I better write it down. The other 10% of the time, you're there to kind of catch if other people are saying, well, if they say the facts wrong, you better, or misquote the law. Because we're kind of as Justice Crullers calls the clerks, the keepers of the case. So you should know that case front to back.
What is the collaboration between other clerks, yourself, and the justice in a broad sense?
There's not a whole lot of collaboration between other clerks. You can always go over there and be like, oh, you've had a case where you've dealt with this before. What law did you find that in? Or the other thing is, they can always come your way too, and just kind of back and forth on, hey, you ever deal with like grain thresher law or something like that? And like nobody says yes because that's a weird thing. But it's pretty much your collaboration is with the justice, and they'll tell you what they think and what you think, and either like I want it written this way, or take a stab at it and see what you think.
Mm-hmm. But do you have to keep up on those legal precedents from the United States courts and so forth when North Dakota issues are coming up?
Yeah, so I think just there was that North Dakota case that went up to the Supreme Court from I don't know the name of it, but we always keep up on stuff that's pertinent to North Dakota law, and I think all the justices really want you to do that. And so, there's through the Supreme Court, they offered several new subscriptions to keep you up to date on the law, and the legal researching tools will keep you like, hey, there's a this, you should read this case. They'll highlight this case for you and let you know. So between that and you got to read K-Fire and Valley News Live and Bismarck Tribune and the Minot Daily to keep up on like local things. So you don't want to look at it in the vacuum. You want to look at it as a whole.
Gotcha. So looking back again a little bit in hindsight, did you have any misconceptions about a law clerk that you walk out going, oh, that was completely different from what I thought?
I 100% thought I'd be, just 90 hours a week, slave driving, working hard, no work, no fun, all work. And it was, you do work. It's not like it's a day at the beach. You do your job, but it's not like, you have to work. Like most attorneys work over 40 hours a week to get their billable hours. And it was just kind of nice to go in there and, just try and just master the craft. I think the best phrase the clerks of my year came up with was at the district court, they are like the MASH hospital. They're just patching the guy up to get him on the ship. And then the Supreme Court is the surgeon that has to be delicate and fix the problems and make it so, we have good precedent and we have good law to follow.
Right. And very few cases are overturned from the district, from what I understand.
Ooh, I don't. I'd say it's tough, like because the court, it really depends on the issue, because I feel like most family law issues, from reading the court's opinions, are pretty much affirmed. But you get in some of those complex oil and gas or tort issues, they can get snowball and make errors, and which causes them to have to overturn the court.
Right.
And it just depends on what happens, and it all kind of boils down to what the two attorneys did across from the district court judge.
Mm-hmm. And comes down to the fact that the Supreme Court has the time to do that.
Right.
Versus a district court might have a certain time frame to get that trial completed, I guess.
Well, because I traveled with the court twice, and Chief Jensen he had this quote where he's like, there's 52 courts, and I think they hear over 300,000. I might be saying a wrong number, but they say that they do 52 courts have over 300,000 cases, and only 400 get appealed. Mm-hmm. So those district court judges do a splendid job of corralling these cases and making good decisions.
Yeah. 180,000.
180,000. Anyway, my bad, listener.
I looked at the annual report. So how do you think your experience as a law clerk could influence your legal career?
Well, I never thought I could be a judge, and I was like, you know what? This is actually really interesting, because I'm a very hands-on, and I kind of thought a judge didn't really do that much hands-on. Like a appellate court, I thought they were pretty hands-off, but they, like I said, they're a surgeon. They get in there and they tinker with the nuts and bolts and kind of come out with a good decision. So I wouldn't be opposed to maybe being a court, working in the court someday.
Finally, what advice would you give to law school students who are thinking about becoming a law clerk at the North Dakota Supreme Court?
I'm gonna take a step back, Brian. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna talk about how if anybody's thinking about going into a career in the legal field, mm-hmm. I think you should go to your local district court, because most of the hearings are open. There's only a select few that are not open. I would go talk to the bailiff at the security at the front desk or the clerk at court and hey, I'm interested. What type of trials do you have this week or next week? I'd like to sit in. That's my first advice for anybody thinking about maybe going to law school. It's just to go see the nuts and bolts with it, because attorneys love to gab, and they'll talk your ear off, and they love an audience. And with my answer to that question, I forgot your question, Brian.
What advice would you give to law students who are thinking about becoming a Supreme Court law clerk?
Well, I'd say you should definitely apply. Don't self-select. You should really work hard and getting your grades good to have, be in that top 20%. If it means just going to the football game or the hockey game to study or read a little bit, it might be worth it if you're really thinking about doing this, because there's only been 95 plus, 100 and some odd iterations of Supreme Court clerks, and I'm one of the lucky few. And so, you get to join that cool group, and it was worth the heartache and suffering through law school of 90-hour plus work weeks to get here. And because you meet a lot of fun people. You get to meet Brian, so.
Well, that's something. I don't know if that's a fringe benefit or anything, but
it is.
It certainly is interesting work at the courts, no doubt.
Yes.
All right. Anything else to add? I think that's all the questions I have otherwise.
Well, thank you for interviewing me, Brian. I hope I answer your questions well. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks again for listening to 701 Civics as we dive in and learn about the civics processes and people and positions in North Dakota. Please be sure also to stop and rate us on the podcast format that you're listening to so we can continue to increase our audience and be better citizens of our state and of our nation.